Welcome to the Practice Podcast, a show created by lawyers to help lawyers in life and business without all the complicated lawyer language. Let's welcome Bast Amron founders and your hosts, Jeff Bast and Brett Amron.
Hello, and welcome to the Practice Podcast with Brett Amron and Jeff Bast.
Wow, Jeff Bast, a shot out of a cannon.
You like that?
Today. How you doing?
I'm on my second cup of coffee. I'm fired up. We have a great guest.
What's in that coffee? Are we sure it's just coffee?
It's just coffee.
All right. Fair enough.
I actually didn't even finish the first one and already put a second.
I'm not even
right
going to ask how you're doing today because your introduction and your level of energy tells me how you're doing today. So I don't need to ask.
Says it all.
Good.
Life is good.
Good.
Life is good.
All right.
That's it.
That's all I got today?
All right. So my question to you is kind of an odd question.
Oh, geez. Here we go.
What is your favorite smell from your childhood?
Interesting. From my childhood.
It could be. It doesn't have to be your childhood, but yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple.
Go for it. Yeah. You can give me as many as you want.
One is the smell of fresh bread.
Is that something from your childhood?
Yeah, it is, but it is to this day still.
Somebody
like,
bake or buy?
No, so in my house, if they came home with a fresh rye bread, like I would always take a piece out, always.
Right.
And to this day, when if I buy a fresh sourdough or I always take a piece and I eat it, like always.
I love before you get home.
Oh yeah, you mean 100%.
Right. And it's sliced, or you're cutting a piece or tearing a piece off.
Mostly sliced, but occasionally I'll tear a piece off. So, and the smell of like roasted garlic.
Nice. These are good ones.
I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
And anytime there's that smell,
too.
Well, right. Yeah, you put garlic and bread. I mean, yeah.
I like those.
The smell of fresh air, too. Just fresh air and being outside is another that just, that is my meditation is being outside with fresh air.
I would have thought you said like the air when you're in the mountains. I love when you're on a hike, the air.
That's the fresh air. We're not getting fresh air out here on the street in downtown Miami. I mean, right? So let's be honest.
But that kind of fresh air is like, where you could smell like the moisture in the air. I just love that.
Yeah. And the fresh breeze and that. And so those, just off the top of my head. And
good.
And you,
good ones.
You, Mr. Bass?
Well, my childhood answer is the smell of chlorine on my skin.
Oh, yeah.
As I swam as a little kid.
That was a favorite of yours.
As a little kid, I don't do a lot of pool swimming at all, but if I do,
you smell it.
I smell it on my skin. It just reminds me of being a kid. But the other one, the reason I thought of that is coffee. I just love the smell of coffee.
Good coffee.
We used to have a coffee place downtown that roasted their own beans, and I just loved walking in that place. The smell of like fresh roasted beans was just amazing.
That's a good one too. I agree. That's another one, and I agree. That wasn't odd.
The smell of my wife. My wife.
Oh, that was a good one.
It's that would be not for my childhood because I didn't know her.
Lauren, I like your smell too.
Anyway, our guest today, I want to hear about your favorite smells. Our guest today is Jason Welt. Jason is the president and CEO of Jason A. Welt, PA, and he's a leading expert in court-ordered real estate sales throughout the Southern District of Florida. Since 2002, Jason has been appointed by both federal and state courts to serve as a real estate agent and advisor for hundreds of liquidation and auction sales. His expertise spans Chapter 7, Chapter 11 bankruptcy cases, federal and state court-appointed receiverships, assignments for the benefit of creditors. Jason's also retained by liquidating agents for the SEC, and he also represents private sellers, buyers, and national banks in REO property sales. He comes from a true legacy of service in the court system. His father is the longest tenured U.S. bankruptcy trustee in the Southern District of Florida. Jason is known for his deep understanding of the court process and his exceptional reputation with trustees, receivers, judges,
lawyers in general.
In general, he continues to uphold the respected Welt name in South Florida. I've said South Florida, but it's really beyond.
Yeah,
you're everywhere, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, especially in the last couple of years, it's gone beyond.
You've expanded.
Yeah. I mean,
if you're in Florida, you know the Welt name, and know Jason particularly, especially dealing with real estate, bankruptcy, insolvency, anything with distressed assets, distressed sales, it's in your blood.
It's in my blood.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you want to share a favorite smell from childhood?
Sure. I was thinking about it. I was probably going to say
the smell of a courtroom.
Soccer fields.
A soccer field. Yeah, okay.
Okay. That was a big part of my life growing up before it kind of transitioned into golf. And now, the smell of a morning golf course is great. Walking into the pro shop, getting your coffee, smelling the coffee. It's kind of like the start of the weekend for me. So yeah, golf's a big part of my life. So the smell of the morning, golf course, grass just got cut, it's ready to go. We're usually the first groups out of our course. So yeah, always get that good morning smell.
What about the smell of the leather from the bag? Yeah. Do you have a leather bag?
I do have a leather bag.
Like the leather from the bag, does that also,
I think it's more also you get like that leather glove too. Yeah. You get a nice fresh glove and it's like sticky and it smells like leather. It's like ready to go. Yeah, no, that's definitely, the soccer field for me was always like a good childhood experience. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
Good question.
I like it. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for engaging on that.
And thanks for the good intro. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it was all
you
true.
Did it. It's
all
just
true.
words that Jeff read.
I usually spread that out on my pitches, so it's nice to hear someone else say it.
So you're going to take that clip.
Absolutely.
And you're just going to, and because Jeff has a beautiful voice.
It's on the website.
Just forward it along. Yeah, if you want, I'll participate in your pitches. I can just come in and make the introduction. Yeah. I'll be on the beginning of the Zooms. Yeah. Make the introduction, and I'll just sign off.
Hired.
Okay. All right. So Jason,
a new revenue stream.
My question for you is: your dad has been in this system for ages.
Yep.
Do you know how old? My question was really because we were on the topic of being children. Is when do you first remember knowing what your dad did, and did you have an understanding of what he did?
So originally, my dad was a real estate developer with his brother, Warren. They bought a ton of the old motels in Sunny Isles Beach and converted them to condos. Originally, they were trying to push casinos in the early 80s. A lot of their license plates when I was growing up always said Casinos 1, Casinos 2, because they were really, very adamant and involved in trying to bring it here. Didn't work out, and probably, my dad always says my Uncle Warren be flipping in his grave if he saw what was going on at Hard Rock right now. It's real game. My dad still can't understand it. He's like, they may have blackjack. Like, they've had it for a while. You just can't understand it. They have it. They did it. They did it without you. Like, they accomplished it. But the first memories, I guess, was oddly enough when we had an old townhouse in Hollywood. Sanit Kapila would come and train when he was becoming a trustee, literally in my townhouse when I was probably under 10 years old.
Wow.
And I remember all the cases being stapled to manila folders and highlighting all the assets, the bank accounts. Now everything's so different. It's just an algorithm just spits out and tells you what to look for if you're a trustee,
That's funny.
And before we were highlighting them and looking through all the bank statements and everything. So I guess like probably under 10 years old, I kind of had a gist of what was kind of going on. And then obviously when they had the office in Hollywood on 95, that was like, a real spectacle. Like everyone would come and say hi to us. We had the dogs running around. It was just a great environment.
When was the first time you started working in, or does your dad say to you, hey, why don't you come on in and help us out and do some stuff?
Yeah. So after college, I came right down here, got my real estate license, but just kind of had it in my back pocket, so to speak, for a little bit. Worked at my dad's office right from Gainesville.
Go Gators. Go Gators, yeah.
Yep, go Gators.
We are recording this right after the National Championship.
National champ.
And I would do the grunt,
recognize that.
And I would do the grunt 341 stuff, just kind of learning the system, highlighting all the assets, stapling them into the folder, going with him to the 341s, which I haven't done in so many years. But it was just a real eye-opening experience to see, the room full of people, good stories, sad stories, bad stories, medical stories, whatever it is. But you kind of learn a lot in your early 20s of the other side of the table, everyone always says, what do you think about what's going on? It's like they always want to ask me because like maybe I'm like the, the telltale of what's to come, or maybe like what do you foresee, in the real estate market? Like I'm like the indicator, so to speak,
The canary in the coal mine,
so that's kind of like what I started doing with my dad. And then when he was so busy with Chapter 11s, back in the day, there was so much reorg.
There was a lot.
I mean, he would probably not underestimating like 6 operating 11 trustee, cases where it's either a casino or a motorcycle shop or something. So just going to all those different cases and learning about it so much back in the day was, I think, really great. And of course, it created so many connections for me. I mean, that's where it all started, right? I mean,
so like late 90s, early 2000s, right? There were so many Chapter 11s down here.
When I used to come home and visit, it was something, you know, from college. It's like he was literally operating 2 casino ships, like, you know, like literally counting the money in the back with like, you know, Al and Barbie, like literally counting the dollars.
So I just want to catch up because there's a lot of non-lawyers and a lot of non-bankruptcy lawyers. A couple of things that you said that maybe people may not appreciate. One is that Jason's dad had a building right off I-95 that said Kenneth A. Welt trustee in big, bold letters. You could not miss that. So I wonder, I'll come back to that. You know, I had a question about that, whether or not like your friends would, you know, comment on that because everyone knew that building. It was right off 95, but 341 meetings are the initial meeting. It's called the meeting of creditors. And at that meeting, any bankruptcy debtor has to appear and they're under oath and they have to answer questions about what's in their bankruptcy schedules and anyone can show up. And so in the old days when they were in person, there would be dozens of them scheduled at a time. All the debtors would be there.
Listening to everyone's stories.
The panicked look on people's faces as they're listening to other people answer questions and lose assets. Like they're getting asked about this bank account and wait a minute, that you need to turn that over to me or this asset.
You see that watch.
Yeah, exactly. And so those days now
it's all on Zoom.
Virtual on Zoom, so you don't really get that same emotional feel. But I remember that room. There were people, you would see people out in the hallway meeting their lawyer for the very first time. You know, as they're walking in about to be interrogated by someone. It was, you know, I imagine in your 20s to have experienced that, you probably learned way more just about life and the world, the struggles, because a lot of us, if you grow up in a nice neighborhood, you don't really have a lot of exposure to people who are, you know, financially strapped.
The experiences teach you so much, you know, like I'll totally upfront and honest, wasn't a great student. Education was not forced on me. I didn't really focus so much on it. But the things I learned in the first 5 years of just seeing the other side of the table, sad story, you know, all those stories, even the good stories too, right? I mean, there's a lot of good things that come out of bankruptcy court. You know, just seeing that in my 20s, I think really helped me for the next 20 years. And all the things that I saw, a lot of people call me and say, I got a story for you. I'm like, heard it all. There's really nothing you're going to throw at me that I haven't heard. You know, whether it's working for my dad or even independently on my own. I mean, I've heard everything.
So was that the plan for you? Like when you went off to college, was it, you know, okay, when I'm going to go to school and then I'm going to come back and work for my dad? Or were you like, no, I've seen that. I have an idea that I want to do something else. And then you kind of saw that, you know what, actually I do want to do that. Like what was the plan?
You know, it's not really like a family business, right? You know, I can't be a trustee unless someone wants me to be. So it's not something he can just pass down to me.
Right.
But, you know, I knew I wasn't going to be a lawyer or an accountant, but I knew I had such connections in front of me and how do I capitalize on them, right? And, you know, getting the real estate license is like, you know, the easiest thing in the world and everyone has it. But to focus on something that no one else really was something that I knew I had to kind of capture and jump all over. You know, I started Trustee Realty 20-something years ago. And I think Barry Muckamall gave me my first case, was All-Star Mortgage. Dan Gonzalez represented him. I'm going to go see him after this, you know, so these are, you're talking 25-year relationships that I've known these people, you know, and at 46, when you've known someone 25 years in the business, it's, you know, a good portion of your life, you know? So, and again, like known these people for so long. So my dad was always great at maintaining relationships, you know, and he still is.
He's still organizing these dinners.
You know, so it's like, and I think it's a thrill for him, even at 80, you know, to see all the people come, you know, so I think it's a little bit of an ego as well, but we won't tell him that. You know, but I think...
What are the odds he listens to this?
This one he will listen to.
I'm kidding.
But even like him, you know, he's, you know, he didn't go to law school. He's one of the few trustees probably in the country that's not a lawyer or is not an accountant. He's just a straight businessman, you know, from experiences, right? So that's kind of like how I base my business. So
amazing. I love it. And so, and real estate was just a natural place for you to go with this?
Yeah. I mean, I saw all the sales, number one, that my dad was doing in whether it's Chapter 11s or Chapter 7s. So I knew it was a money maker that wasn't going to be lawyer or an accountant. You know, it was an easy in.
It's adjacent.
Yeah. And my dad always said, look, I'm going to open the door for you. But once you walk into that house building, it's on you. You're going to have to do a good job. And like we were talking before, like, maybe the first 7, 8, 10 years, it's like, oh, you're Kenny's son, and because I was also working like in his business, but now I'm like so unaffiliated with his business. So, I like knowing that I'm getting it because of my track record, not necessarily because, hey, you're Kenny's son and he gave me a case 20 years ago and blah, blah, blah. So,
right.
So tell our audience what is your specialty? It's real estate, clearly.
Sure.
Selling assets adjacent to or in some sort of insolvency or bankruptcy proceeding. What is your specialty?
Well, other than taking the beneficial things, I think, of marketing within a court sale. A lot of people are always like hesitant on that. They don't want to see receivership sale. They don't want to see bankruptcy sale. But I think it's a benefit. It's a benefit, right? But it's hard for people to really understand that. And I think one of my strong suits is really getting people to feel comfortable with it, kind of not dumbing it down a little bit, but just kind of feeling calm about the situation. Look, you got to use it to your benefit. It's going to separate you from any asset sale out there. Maybe there's another receivership sale, but it's unlikely, right? So you're going to have to use it to your benefit. I think that's a strong suit of mine, and also navigating my way through the court process. I'm not going to mention any names, but I got a call last week where someone's like, look, the case is getting ugly. It's going to either get dismissed, it's going to get converted. We want to talk to you. Can you come to the hearing? And I said, I'll come to the hearing, but you're going to have to file an application. I'm not going to be like Michael Corleone's brother in the back in the Pantangeli hearing and everything just goes cool because I'm back there. And you letting the judge know.
Good reference, by the way. Well done.
Right. Well done. Letting the judge know that, maybe Jason's going to come involved, So I think once I step in and get those people that are nervous to kind of calm down a little bit and let them know that at the end of this process, you're going to be thanking me. I promise you. You hate me now, you'll be thanking me when it's done. Like I just had a huge sale last year. The guy was like adamant about getting rid of me. Like he did not like my process. He didn't like anything.
The debtor?
The debtor, yeah.
So the debtor, and so someone else forces them to hire you, or what?
Really highly recommended.
Right.
They want to hire their sister, their brother, their friend.
So the debtor's lawyer says you got to hire Jason, and the debtor's like,
no, I don't like the bankruptcy. He's going to go to auction, fire sale, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't usually happen because we're always getting market value. I don't care what the language says on the marketing. We're going to get market value. Right. But he hated me in the beginning. He was adversarial. He was uncooperative. He wouldn't show up when I needed him and stuff like that. A week after the sale, he was the happiest person. God, what a fresh start. Thank you for calming me down, So it's almost like, just kind of wait to the end and, you'll see the prize.
It's scary for people.
And by the way, that prize may not be $1. It just may be the mental, relaxation, I mean, no one likes litigation, right? I mean, on the,
we do.
Against you, no one likes it. No, against you, no one likes it.
By the way, I mean, that's when anyone comes to us, whether they've been served with a lawsuit or they want to sue somebody, our pitch to them is before you do this or get further into it, let's talk about it, right? Sure. Because it's never a fun thing.
Right.
With real estate in distress, like I think you alluded to this, which is everyone always thinks, oh man, a distress sale or a sale related to a distress process is going to be less than market value and it's just going to kill it and all this stuff. How do you address that, right? Like how do you deal with, I'm going to get you market value even though it is in out of an insolvency proceeding and everyone knows that there's some distress around this?
So let's focus on a commercial sale.
Sure.
Usually a commercial sale, you're dealing with a sophisticated buyer who's maybe even been through this process before. Maybe he's been a stalking horse before. Maybe he's bought in bankruptcy court before. So it makes them feel comfortable that it's going to be exposed to the world, right? I mean, we're going to go through the LoopNet, the Crexis, the MLS, the 1,500 person blast, all the big e-blasts and everything. So the exposure is going to be there. So I can assure you that we're going to expose the property to someone that's either buys on the bottom, buys on the top, it doesn't matter. So I convinced them by saying, here's my stats. I got 10,000 calls. I sent out 25 Dropbox packages. This is market value. That person hired Greenspoon. That person hired you. That person hired Greenberg Treuig. We're putting a pretty formal process together. And at the end of the day, when you have a cash buyer, we sell things in cash. We sell things with no contingencies. This is not like we're going to go tie up a property for 6 months and get rezoning. So given the circumstances, we're going to get you market value. Of course, in a bankruptcy sale, we can't tie up a property for a year and a half while they go get rezoning. So there's going to be maybe a discount to that or something. But we are where we are. We're in a bankruptcy court proceeding.
Right.
we got to deal with it. Well, I forgot what Judge Crystal says. Bankruptcy court is like putting your hand in a lion's mouth, easy going in.
Their head. Boom.
Right going in, tough going out. We're here, right? So let's maximize it while we're here. So, and I think it's maybe like the calming and showing also the past results of high media properties, whether it's a Versace mansion or a Star Island house, they're going through the bankruptcy court and the dollar's there.
And from a buyer's perspective, I mean, you are getting the benefits of the court process, and that you're going to come out with a clean property, right? Usually all warts gone, unless it's as is. But still, you're coming out of that with a court order,
363,
right? Exactly. So the buyers, like you said, that have this experience and have been through this, are going to recognize the value add by going through a process.
And the reason why I focused on commercial first is because it's just totally different. Residential asset sale, which, probably right now it's a mix of 50-50. You're dealing with a mom with a stroller. They love the kitchen. I love the color. Blah. It's a totally different animal. Like sometimes when they have, call it just a general single family home, 700,000, 800,000, 600,000, I would never suggest like a bidding process or anything like that. Because 99% of those buyers are going to get a mortgage. They're going to get an appraisal. You really got to be patient for 20, 25 days and then really maximize dollars, because the end user is going to spend more money. So residential homes, I'll never push like bidding process, auction, higher and better, even though it's a mechanism that will be, in the motion. But I never really try to market for higher and better on a residential sale, because it really would chill the whole process out. Commercial, different. Like it's sophisticated buyers. They've dealt with it before. You say the word stalking horse to them and they know what it is. I'm like, yes. I don't have to spend an hour now and tell them to look it up. So
you don't just work in bankruptcy. So how do you get involved in a case that's or in circumstance that's not a bankruptcy before? So can people engage you before they end up in bankruptcy?
You mean like an out-of-court workout or something like that?
I don't know, anything. Obviously, if someone's selling a piece of property, they can hire you. But in terms of distressed,
the answer is yes, but I feel like convincing them to step into the court clears up so many things, So it's like, the lawyer will push the court, I'll push the court, and then you got this debtor says, I don't want to do the court, So I think once we step into the court, it flushes everything out. So, 98% of my sales are in some kind of court proceeding.
Because you need the court to cleanse to make the sale viable for the buyer.
For sure.
So the buyer's not having to solve all the complications of, liens and encumbrances.
Right. And then from the creditor's perspective, either a lender or other creditors, right, they see the process as favorable too, because now they know
in a bankruptcy, you're saying?
In a bankruptcy.
100%.
Yeah, because then the money sits there and then it's going to get divided up as it should without having to worry that, they're going to sell this property out from underneath us or,
If I'm talking to a creditor's lawyer and I'll say, they're thinking about bankruptcy, he's like, great.
Right.
I hope that happens.
Right.
We'll retain you. We'll get this done and it'll be even quicker, better. And, so they're only hoping that it happens.
So, but you also do REO, which I guess we didn't explain what that one is, real estate owned. That's when the bank takes back a piece of property. You do that for lenders that take back properties. Or do you ever get involved in foreclosures, like in the midst of it before when it's in this transition? Probably not.
No, not really.
Okay.
No.
So when the bank takes it back, they will often call
again, those days were years ago, I think.
Yeah.
I think there was,
I think we may be back there.
And by the way, that could be true as well. Or a lot of note buying goes on as well.
Right.
There's a lot of paper buying going on, and then they'll either be aggressive or work something out with them. But out of court stuff, I'd like to see it in the court. It's just like, it's my niche. It's like where I want to be.
Good.
I feel comfortable there.
So in your 20 plus years of doing this, what's the biggest change or changes that you've seen over time, in terms of this business?
The buyers are smarter.
Buyers are smarter, more sophisticated.
More sophisticated, right? They know the process. They know,
and
right?
Maybe they're not trying to do it themselves, and they get people like you to come help them. And kind of from my standpoint, I'd rather deal with a lawyer that I've known 20 years and a buyer that is shrewd, or not mentioning nationalities, but some can be tougher than others.
Sure,
So I'd rather deal with the lawyer all day for sure.
They think
they get it. They get my language. I don't have to convince them, coach them on the process that's kind of embedded in them. So
you can speak the language.
The language is key.
Right.
The language is super key.
People are not accustomed to this, just the whole idea, if you haven't been involved in one before.
Right. And I was listening to your podcast with Brett, and it was like how, don't step into
Brett
a bankruptcy.
Marks.
Yeah, Brett Marks.
Episode, well, no, I don't know the number, but Brett Marks is episode. Check it out.
Don't step, people are scared to do bankruptcy.
Right.
It's not a normal, conventional traditions. And same with real estate.
Yeah.
Even if I'm co-brokering with someone that's, out of Florida, I got to spend a little time kind of coaching them a little bit. It's not conventional. It's not traditional. What if we do this? Can't do that. And then I send them my contract with tons of blackouts on there and a bunch of additional terms that they have, dispute resolutions handled in bankruptcy court, all these other things that they're not accustomed to seeing. So
yeah. I would imagine, and the other thing I've experienced in working with real estate brokers in the insolvency world is, I think more so now, but back in the day, a lot of them didn't appreciate that they need to get hired. If they were hired pre-bankruptcy, then the debtor enters bankruptcy, they need to get hired again,
which
done.
doesn't happen sometimes.
Right. A lot of them, I'm saying, a lot of people, they just didn't know. And I remember having this conversation, not just real estate brokers, but lawyers too. But who don't,
by the way,
I've
been involved in cases where they've told the realtor, you're going to have to go get employed in bankruptcy court. And they're like, I'm good. They don't want to sign an affidavit. They don't want to have that exposure. What if I warrant the opportunity, right? Like they're staying away from it.
They're just not familiar with it, and they just don't want to have
And I
that,
remember, I don't know if it was you or Jeff said, I'm not stepping inside a tax court, right? And it's kind of the same thing. Like a Compass residential broker, it's doing basic real estate, may feel quite uncomfortable.
Right. You stick an affidavit in front of them and
like, what's this? Am I interested? Who do I know?
Right. And you're a beneficiary of that because then you're the next call.
So what do you see in this crazy environment we have currently? We were talking about it before we went on to record here, but what are you seeing and what, without, none of us are, prognosticators, but like, what do you see coming down the pike?
Florida.
In South Florida. Yeah, in South Florida.
Because we were talking earlier, like there's companies out there that do what I do on a national scale. And we were talking like the volume is just so high in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, because they can service so many states quickly, right? Hey, honey, I'm going to Philly to go sell this property. For me, 2 hours is Fort Myers. There, 2 hours is Philly, right? So they can service so much. And Delaware's there, which gets a ton of, as you know. But, I'm starting to see now, especially in the last, it seems like very recently, 3 to 5 months, call it, the volume's working its way down here. It seems like there's some pretty large real estate related bankruptcy cases. I don't mention the names, obviously, but they're here. Maybe they weren't here a year ago. The lenders are the big PE groups that we all know and hear on CNBC every day. Right. So it seems like it's starting to maybe work its way down here.
Yeah.
A lot of friends will ask me that, I'm like, hey, what do you think about the house? What do you think about it? And I'm like, I can't look at the house as like Apple stock, right? You're getting such a good use out of it, whether it goes down, up, whatever. You're raising your family.
Live there, right?
It's just so many benefits. So you can't really you can't time it, right? You're going to go sell it high to go buy somewhere else high. You're going to go sell high to go rent for 3 years. Like this is not, you can't catch it like that. You're trying to day trade your house and it's like, can't happen. Right. Yeah, so I think if you're location is well west in Parkland, I associate with Broward County because that's where my life is, or Boca or something. I mean, I think you're good, right? I don't see prices going chopping in half or anything like that. Number one, I think the people that bought were a better buyer than they were 15, 16 years. They're vetted out better, right?
A lot of cash happened in the last few years.
By the way, putting 30% down on a house is, significant money, right?
Sure.
Someone's buying a $500,000 house, it's not, the teacher doesn't have $150,000 laying around for a down payment.
And by the way, good luck finding a house for $500,000.
Right. By the way, I think it was the average home in Broward is $548.
That's nuts.
Like what teacher can afford all
average,
that? Right. So it's like, it's so unfair.
Yeah. I think you see two things. One is the rebound following the 2008 crash where lending practices were just so loose.
Zero down.
There was like zero no underwriting at all.
No.
And very low, dollars down. Now,
no
like
vetting,
you said, 30% down is uncommon. I mean, is more common.
Yeah, there's a better buyer.
There's actual underwriting, but also we had a big influx of people with kind of a different dollar. People moving from New York, Chicago, big cities where the dollar was just much, the real estate values were so high. They sold their little 1,000 square foot unit apartment in Manhattan for a couple $1 million, and then they come down here.
And I've talked to some of those people, and they're like, you know what? the summers are brutal here.
They are.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's
you
true.
know what?
They are.
They are.
and
Is
we've
it
been-
me as I'm getting older? Like the summers just feel like
Wow.
No,
worse.
I
Like they're
think,
just
yeah.
brutal.
Yeah,
It
well,
is.
there are reasons for that,
The
but we
earth
don't
is
have to talk
warming.
about that. We can shy away from
But
it.
no,
you know.
what I'm saying
But
is like they were
also-
so quick to come here, and then they spend June through September, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh man,
Okay,
it's
so
brutal.
so
And
the
they
only
also
thing,
haven't faced one
Major
major storm.
hurricane.
storm.
Which I hope we don't.
so the one thing I'd say about that is wherever you live, there is weather. Right.
Right,
And any
right.
particular time of year, there's going to be issues,
course.
right? So even if you live in New York, depending on where in New York you live, so if you live in the city or you live somewhere near the city,
Yeah.
in the summer, it's hot.
brutal. I know.
And we have
So-
great AC. That's the other thing. We do.
So
We have
listen,
great
it's
AC.
hot. It's brutal
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And it's brutal hot for longer, right? You get into September and everyone's like, wait, it's September. Why is it not cooling down? It does not, right? But then you get to this time of year, we're starting to get on the upswing of the temperatures. But I don't know if you're outside today and yesterday.
Cool.
It's gorgeous. Like
Oh, it was awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's great.
We live
So-
in paradise.
Yes.
We live in
I know
paradise.
Jeff thinks we're in paradise. So but I think it's anywhere, right? Anyway, I don't want to talk about the weather, but I think that's a fair point, which is residential to me is completely different than the commercial may drive the residential at some point, right? Because if the commercial is good and businesses are coming down here, then
Right.
the
They gotta live.
residential, they got to live somewhere and the residential is going to go up.
It's kind of like what's going on in Coral Gables, by the way, because the Citadel's coming here.
I know.
I mean, they're buying every house that
And
it
Coconut
has
Grove, too.
7 zeros
Right.
in it.
Yeah.
They're buying it. So it's like you can't compare that market to Lauderhill, right? Because there's such a demand, regardless of what the stock market is doing.
Right.
So,
Right. I agree. I think that's right. And I think interest rates, are lower than they were a little while ago, and maybe they'll go down. Who knows? But I think it's location, and you're right on residential. If you live in the house, you live in the house.
Yeah.
But the commercial stuff is, to me, I agree with you.
business
And
move.
it's a business move and it drives the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if we start to see more issues or cracks, if you will, in the commercial space, then, like you said, there may be an uptick down here that sort of flows down from other areas.
And again, demand's still high here, right?
Yeah, we're victims of our own success.
It's like
such
we're
a great place to live that so many people have moved here that now prices are high, more congestion,
crazy,
traffic all the time. So
Even rental
it's
prices
interesting.
are crazy. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I was even
That's good for you,
thinking about this. Like, you know what? We like the Boca area. We're in Weston, right? But we like Boca. It's closer to my son's school. Probably gonna maybe send my daughter there as well. But I'm looking at some of these rentals, and I'm like, is this for 3 years?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? I mean, it's insane. Some of these numbers.
Yeah.
So other than the golf course on a weekend and hanging with your kids and doing that stuff and maybe smelling the grass from a soccer field, what is it that Jason Welt will do for fun to sort of unwind and enjoy himself?
Watch golf.
That was a
Play
pivot.
golf.
You like
Well,
that,
it's
you like that pivot?
It's Masters
It's
Week.
Masters
Yeah,
Week.
it's
I know.
Masters.
I
It's
know.
not
a big
I
deal.
know.
It's
I
a
know.
big deal for me.
I
But
know.
If he's not playing.
funny story. So in college, actually going back to like when I was 12 and 13 years old, I actually had a mobile disc jockey company.
Oh.
Yeah, with me and one of my buddies, and we played 8th grade parties.
What was your handle? Like DJ?
Well, I'll get into that. Okay,
because
when
I
we
know
had-
there's a name there.
100%.
Okay.
So when we had a mobile disc jockey company, it was just me and my buddy, and it was called the letter 2, Much Noise.
I like it.
All right.
And we did like fraternity parties. My dad and my friend's dad would rent a van and pop it up with speakers.
I love it.
Oh, this is true. I mean, we had a full business at 12 and 13 years old.
I love it.
So anyway, then I go to college, and my roommate that was a straight up random had turntables. So I kind of took my love for DJing back in the day, but back then it was just like play, wait for the song to stop, play again, wait for the song to stop, play again. He was doing like real DJing, and it really caught my attention. So I got my dad to invest in 2 Technique 1200 turntables and mixers and speakers, and he went to Sam Ash and used his credit card. I remember the day, and within 6 months I picked it up super quick. I was a resident DJ at Simon's for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Nice.
Then I was getting
Simon's,
booked like outside the state, outside the city. So it was really during the time where it wasn't as commercialized as it is now. It's like way before my time, way before my time.
Yeah.
And I still do it, and I love it. And I still do it in my room, and I still record just to kind of listen to myself. So that is definitely one of my stress reliefs.
Do you ever do it somewhere publicly or?
I mean, I would if the opportunity arose, but
You ever release some of the music, or just
I don't
like
make
put
my
it
own
out?
music.
You don't make
just
okay.
mixing other people's
No,
music.
but mixing the mix.
Oh yeah,
though,
they're on
is-
SoundCloud and stuff like that. I have stuff. We'll go back to the name. It was Positive J.
Positive.
And my sign was like a plus sign with the little J.
I like it. Good stuff.
You forever will be positive J for me. Sorry, I'm not gonna forget that. I love it though.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that's kind of like my stress relief. I shut my door and I put it on loud, and I don't really care about what's beyond that door.
Because we need all that, right?
Yeah, you got to have me time.
Good.
I'm all about the me time.
I love it.
One last question. Since you followed in your dad's footsteps, how would you feel about your kids following in yours?
I look at it as like just real estate, so my answer would probably be no.
Right.
You know, I kind of want so much more for my son because, like I told you before, like I wasn't focused on education. I really didn't care about school too much. You know, I cared about the fun things about school, but not the things that I wish I would have cared of thinking about it now. So I kind of want something a little bit bigger for him. He wants to do like sports management, like work for a pro team or something like that. You know, work in the mailroom and work your way all the way up. That's kind of what he wants to do. You know, so, you know, and I do have some connections in the sports industry. So like I'm going to definitely utilize those. Sure. So we'll see what happens with that.
That's
but
awesome.
he's got a lot of great camp friends that he sees so much that mean like the world to him. So we go up to New York and see them like quite often. Just seeing him, he's so happy when he's with them. So for me, it's just so worth it.
And your daughter?
My daughter is a lacrosse player.
Nice.
She's super sassy. You know, the makeup is insane. Now her vanity has worked its way into my office. So we're going to have to do something about that. But
trust me,
there's nothing I can do.
My daughter's 15.
Pick your battles.
Okay. You can't do anything about it.
Pick your battles. Just
That's what I figured you were going to say.
You cannot do anything. Yes, let it go.
It up.
Enjoy it.
But other than golf, I mean, that's, you know, I mean, golf is really it. Do good, 2 big trips a year. I got one coming up in May with Scott, our common friend.
Mutual friend, yes. Awesome. Jason,
great, Jason.
Thanks for
guys.
really, I learned a lot. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Now, this is great that you guys do this.
And if you, the listener, you enjoyed this as much as I did, which doubtful, but if you did, give us a 5-star review. Follow the show, subscribe, and share the show with your friends and family. Help them find us and help us find you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Jason,
Jason.
thank you.
Thank you,
Nelson,
guys.
as
Brett,
always.
you.
Jeff, thank you.
Thank you.
Positive J.
Yes. Positive J. That's going to be my new name.
For more information on this show and other resources, visit fastamron.com and connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram @fastamron.